This week's episode is brought to you by Campaign Refinery, an amazing new email marketing automation tool. Look, in the world of digital marketing, there's a lot to keep track of. We all know this. As much as we're in love with social media and the power of social conversation here at Social Inc. and on the All About Digital Marketing podcast, we are well aware at just how powerful email marketing can be. Email marketing is not dead. In fact, it's never been more important to help you leverage your presence everywhere else into the one channel that you'll own, regardless of what changes Facebook, Twitter, or any other platform makes in the future. I've known the founder, Travis Ketchum, for years, and he's been a past guest on the podcast, episode 15 if you want to listen to it. I've personally used his other products before, and they've been fantastic. The amount of thought that he's put into each and every one of what he's created has been incredible. I'd highly encourage you to try their free 14-day trial at campaignrefinery.com to see what world-class email marketing automation can do for you and your business. Massive thank you to Travis and Campaign Refinery for their support of the All About Digital Marketing show. Welcome to the All About Digital Marketing podcast. The show all about
digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Brought to you by Social Inc., a digital marketing agency specializing in social media and content marketing for brave brands and forward-thinking SMEs. I'm your host, Chris Bruno, and as always, we're here to bring you the most actionable tips, tricks, tools, and insights to help you achieve more when it comes to your digital marketing. Subscribe to the show and be sure to share with a friend if you found something useful or interesting. You can find all the show notes and more information on www.allaboutdigitalmarketing.co.uk. Anthony, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me.
So I'm looking forward to this conversation, Anthony. I think there's a lot of people that are going to love this as well, because I think we're going to go into some really interesting topics. But before we get started, can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got here, your journey in the digital marketing space, and then we'll get cracking.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I manage an agency called Modern Media, and we focus on LinkedIn ads and B2B lead generation. How I got here is actually through the tech and software development world. Initially started my career at IBM doing e-commerce consulting for them, where they would ship me out to their big clients and go build e-commerce stores and launch them and all that good stuff. Enjoyed it, learned a lot. I also live here in Austin, Texas, and got involved in the startup scene. That's the big startup community that's here. Fell in love with that, ended up leaving IBM to start a mobile app development agency of my own. Worked on that for a few years, and we got to work on a whole bunch of different apps and technology for a variety of companies, from startups all the way up to bigger companies, and launched a whole number of apps and saw that some companies would, some established companies or companies with a good marketing plan would launch their app and it would do very well out of the gates, get a lot of downloads, a lot of new customers, and be successful right out of the gates. And then other companies, we would build them just as good of software, but without a good marketing and distribution plan. It would just sit on the app store and no one would download it. So seeing how much time and effort these companies were spending on that naturally got me pulled into helping those clients with marketing after software development. So not only marketing my agency, but marketing for a number of our clients. And we got to work on a whole number of different apps. And then, like I said, just kind of getting pulled into the marketing world, sold that agency a few years ago and started this new agency that's focused on LinkedIn ads and B2B lead generation to help companies like those attract more clients.
It's always interesting, isn't it? Because the product focus without the marketing can often end up being a really, really bad mix, right? So people say, you can only sell a bad product once. But the idea being that actually, even if you have a great product, without a decent strategy, without a decent plan, and without that kind of focus on marketing, it can be a real challenge. Is that what you saw with the apps?
Yeah, exactly. Like we had a number of startups that we worked on that we launched their app, and they did very well. And these startups were went on to go on and get acquired, or a couple of them have scaled to being some pretty good sized companies here in Austin. So we work on a lot of like successful apps, and then it's just seeing, similar startups who just didn't have that marketing plan. They expected you would just, build it and they would come. And unfortunately, App Store has gotten pretty competitive and pretty busy. So that's not the case. So we saw how much time and effort that they were spending on these apps, and then launching and just expecting it just to sell itself. But yeah, that's not the case. Unfortunately, I wish it was. But now it's helping those companies put together the marketing plans so they can get those apps and that technology out in front of their customers.
I'm going to dig into this a little bit deeper before we get into the lead gen and the B2B especially. But I wanted to ask, for anyone who's listening and who is kind of in that startup phase, what were the biggest pitfalls that you saw? What are the biggest kind of missing links in that marketing plan or strategy that companies had that really had that impact to make them not get those results that they were looking for?
So I guess two things just off the top of my head is, one is just usually we just saw some companies that just had pretty much no marketing plan at all, or like they were the tech focused team, or they were the product focused team. A lot of startups might have like tech founders where like they're the ones building it themselves, and then just don't have that marketing specialty in house or on their team. So so we saw a lot of startups that just had like no plans at all, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll email it out to our friends and family, and then it'll go viral from there. So kind of just relying on the virality of social media, and also just relying on like the App Store to promote it for them. But just a lot of times that's not the case, unless some of them it did happen on occasion, but that you can't really rely on that. That's not a marketing plan. And then second is, I'd say, not having the feedback in place that's necessary when you launch a new product. So I guess here we're talking about like startups where, as when we were in a development agency, we would always build, for an example, we would always build like debugging and like crash logs into the app so that we could see, purely from a software point of view, like when did the app crash? When were errors popping up? When was the user not able to log in, for example? And we would get those notifications back so that our development team could improve the software, fix any bugs. And there's always software bugs, so it's important to have that feedback loop, so that you can improve the software as you go. I'd say the other thing that I noticed companies who did very well versus companies who struggled was having a feedback loop with their customers, where they would go to product testing, to purely from like the business sense, the user experience sense, to be able to get their product in the hands of customers and then talk to them about their experience. So we as the agency would handle all the software testing and iterations and feedback, but it's important to also have the company who does that with their customers.
I'm always amazed by, and I think you mentioned it earlier, but it's the tech founders, and not all tech founders. I'm not pigeonholing everybody, but the amount of founders who focus so much on the product they want to build that they actually miss some crazy easy wins when you start to get that feedback loop and you start to generate that kind of feedback loop. It's so important to take on board the feedback, even if it's not what you wanted to hear. It's the saving grace for so many apps, for so many business models of all sorts, not just apps. But it's amazing. Did you find that a lot, that people they knew what they wanted to build, so they would almost ignore the feedback or find excuses for it?
Yeah, essentially. As a tech founder, if you are the person writing the software or who's very like tech focused, maybe you're the subject matter expert, it is hard to extract yourself from that, because you kind of think you know best, but you might know best for what you know, but when you try to sell a product to somebody else, it's going to be about what they know. So it's about how your product that you build is going to fit in with their environment and their business. So everyone has their own blind spots, so you can never do that analysis personally, only by yourself. So it's important to have that feedback loop. And I remember one project very early in the agency and kind of like in my career as a whole was one of these more. The founder was a serial entrepreneur. He had started several very successful tech companies, and we were building an app for his new company. They were pretty early stage, and I remember we were working on some new features and having a conversation with him we had been discussing a new feature that they were looking to roll out, and for where they were, I was kind of giving him feedback to be like, hey, I saw your requirements here, the feature explanation. If we did it like this instead, it would be drastically cheaper for you to build this. Right now you're building an MVP, you want to get it launched. It'd be much cheaper to build it in this other way, which it doesn't exactly meet the feature you have here, but it kind of does it very closely. And his response was, the technology shouldn't influence the product, the customer should influence the product. And just like how very simply he put that, I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I was trying to advise him on the side of costs and effort and timeline and stuff like that. And his feedback was, it's more important to listen to the customers and what the feedback that we are getting from them that we need to build into this product. I don't care if it's more expensive, it's what's going to sell this product.
Now that's the kind of founder you want to work with as an agency. That to me is literally the perfect answer and the perfect response to that kind of a situation. Okay, cool. Well, listen, let's, sorry, I wanted to dig into that because I think it's great advice and it's great for people to realize, where the pitfalls lie, especially if they're just embarking on journeys or if they're struggling with certain things. It can always help to give them some insight. But from your point of view today, so we're talking about B2B lead gen. And this to me is something that so many businesses, small, mid-size, and even some big companies that we've tried to work with in the past actually struggle with. Lead generation can be a tough space and a tough thing to crack, that kind of magic code. So give us a little bit more insight into how you guys work and what it is that you guys specialize in helping your clients.
Sure. So we specialize in working with companies that need to target a niche decision maker at scale. So a lot of companies, you have B2C, which is consumers. Your product might be applicable and sellable to a very broad segment of people. And then you have B2B and companies in B2B that need to sell a very specific solution to a specific type of company and or specific person in that company, decision maker or function that they're serving. A lot of these B2B software solutions or just B2B service product and services in general often serve a very specific person at a very specific company. So where a lot of companies struggle is being able to find that person and target them in a scalable way. You can go out there and buy email lists. A lot of times you can manually do your own prospecting by certain, you probably know a few of your target customers or your Dream 100 customers where you could go look up a number of these people. But once you kind of exhaust your initial lists and your initial outreach, where do you go next? And this is where a lot of companies maybe have traditionally used Google and Facebook advertising to try to get in front of those audiences. But I'll give you another example of kind of one that really cemented it for me as how valuable LinkedIn is compared, for certain companies. There was a business that we were auditing to bring on, and they were doing the traditional Facebook and Google advertising, and they are a big data platform that their software is thousands of dollars per year. It's made for these bigger companies that have huge server farms where they need to analyze a lot of data and do a lot of data processing. This data science company would provide dashboards and analytics and a whole bunch of different features. So it was, you have to be a bigger company to be able to afford the software. And it's really only going to be appealing to the people in the data science departments, the CTOs, CIOs at these companies. So they had been running Google ads and Facebook ads. And as we audited their accounts, we saw that a lot of the people coming in over Google were oftentimes like looking for information, just kind of like people doing research out there. And a lot of times they were students or people early in their career, or just kind of like lightly researching. There were also a lot of people who were looking for jobs and stuff like that. And, as we audited the account, they were pretty much following best practices for keywords and negatives, more phrase match and stuff like that. But these were just the type of people that were getting through, and they were paying for those clicks and stuff like that. And on Facebook, it was often people who were maybe clicking on the ad because it was an appealing video that grabbed their attention, and then they just clicked through and they signed up and they didn't really know what they were signing up for. So the sales team was complaining that all the leads weren't great, and they were making a ton of phone calls to all these leads, because Facebook can push a whole bunch of leads for very cheaply, but they were spending a lot of time calling these leads and not getting any sales out of it. Like, and just none of the conversations were even qualified to be potential buyers. So we took their campaign and we switched it. We launched, we created a LinkedIn campaign for them targeting up bigger companies of 1,000 people, or I think it was like 500 people and above, and then targeting specifically people in data science with data science titles, CIOs, CTOs, and those types of leadership at those companies. And just immediately out of the gates, like in the first week, we have our lead tracker set up, and they're like, these are just the perfect titles, the perfect companies coming through. Our sales team is just thrilled. And they were like, let's totally turn off Facebook and Google. Let's switch to all LinkedIn, and just seeing that shift there. So that's where LinkedIn comes in handy, is when you need to target that very specific person, that very specific type of company, and do it in a scalable way.
I think that's really interesting as well, because, and we talk about this a lot on this podcast and also to our clients especially, but, really kind of breaking down what it is that you're spending money on, but more importantly, what's the plan in the beginning, right? So at the very beginning of this podcast, we were talking about it, the apps that don't really have a marketing plan as such, and that just kind of start rolling into things. So from our side, it's very much social media, and we see it happen time and time again, where we've met brands that are spending sizable amounts to create social media content. And when we ask the question, what sort of results are you getting from it? And they literally look at us going, what do you mean results? And we kind of think, well, hang on a second, right? Let's take this back a step, right? You're not just paying money to push out content on social media without a plan as to what it is you're trying to achieve. And actually, we've been amazed to find out companies spending, tens of thousands every single single year, and have been doing it for a couple of years because they feel like they have to, but not actually breaking down what that looks like. So, and I think what's the way you kind of explain that to me, and the way that I understand this from my own personal experience as well, people don't realize that actually clicks through on your ads, and even if it's a cheap cost per click to get leads through, isn't actually the defining factor, right? What you're looking for is qualified conversations. So what you're really looking for is signed contracts or signed deals with customers. And actually, a lot of people don't look at that cost and don't necessarily plot that out all the way to see just how valuable that actually is. Have you found that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk to a new client or account, or somebody who's probably running Facebook ads, it is going to be a little bit of an educational conversation, because a lot of times people will come to us and be like, hey, we're getting $10 leads, can you beat that on LinkedIn? And I'll give you some metrics of some averages that we see on LinkedIn in a second, but LinkedIn ads are a lot more expensive overall. Just the base CPC is a lot higher, so the resulting cost per lead is a lot higher. But what you really have to look at is yes, that qualified lead percentage. And, if you're getting $10 leads, how many of those leads are good leads? And for a lot of these companies that we work with, for example, we have companies in like the legal space or companies in the HR space. The percentage of, if you were just to advertise that on Facebook, the percentage of qualified leads would be like, one in 100, 1 in 1,000, where if you're getting $10 leads, well, your real qualified lead is more like $100 a lead or $1,000 a lead, because it's just, those people are just so few and far between. So using LinkedIn, where those targeting capabilities are there, that's where you have to go to be able to get in front of these people. So LinkedIn costs, for some averages, LinkedIn in the US, LinkedIn sets the base CPC for sponsored content in the newsfeed to be about like $4.50. If you've run Facebook ads before, also in the US, clicks can start about $1 per click. It's possible to get lower than that, and then you might be running between $1 to $2 to $3 per click. But on LinkedIn, the base is $4.50, and you just go up from there. So if you're looking to target upper level CEOs, especially like Fortune 500 companies, those are more competitive audiences. So you go up from there. We have seen in the last couple months, because of COVID right now, for two reasons, a lot of advertisers have pulled back their ad spend, and there's a lot more people on the platform because we're all kind of forced online right now, that ad costs are actually way down on LinkedIn, about 30 to 40% down. LinkedIn still has that floor of about $4.50 per click in the US, but overall CPC and cost per lead have been at some of the all-time bests for all of our campaigns in the last couple of months. But we usually see resulting cost per lead to be between $30 to $60 per lead, and then that cost per click at about $4.50 minimum in the US.
Again, this is something that can sometimes frustrate me when we're talking to clients, is when we actually start to break down the numbers with them. So what we're actually looking for is, what's the lifetime value? What's a real cost per acquisition of a customer, a paying customer, not a lead, not a click through to a landing page or anything else, but what's the actual cost to acquire one new customer, and how much does that customer generate? Because all of these things, and I think this is really important to kind of dig into a little bit with you, for everyone who's listening, these are the numbers that actually matter, right? These are the numbers that show you what the real return on investment is, not the fact that you managed to get cost per click down to $1 or $4. It doesn't matter. But the idea being of actually what's the real cost per acquisition. So if you spend $20,000, but you're getting a really cheap cost per click, but you only actually bring on one new customer, that's your cost per acquisition, right? This is the thing that so many people don't realize. They kind of try to cherry pick the numbers that they want. And I actually find some agencies guilty of this as well, by focusing on the wrong metrics to try and make their numbers look better, let's say. Whereas in reality, we should be looking at the vitals, i.e. what's the real cost per acquisition and what's the real return on investment, i.e. what's the value of that customer and what's the average that you can actually afford to spend.
Exactly. So you're asking all the right questions and you're having the right conversations. And you're totally right. Like a lot of companies, they focus on that cost per lead metric because it's like almost the easiest to see initially. A lot of companies probably haven't or don't often take the time to go through their CRMs to look at, what is the percentage of qualified leads that have come through here. So it is a harder calculation to get to really have a handle on. So when I hear somebody say, "Hey, I want leads under $10," I'm like, okay, well, let's talk. let's see what you're really getting, and then let me show you what we can do on LinkedIn.
It's always an interesting conversation when people say to me about the price point of the cost per click or the cost per lead or whatever it is. And my question is always vice versa, right? How much is the product you sell? How much is the product you sell and how much do you make on that? So if it's service based, obviously that's, revenue for the company and then that gets distributed into people, etc. But I actually try and work it the other way around, right? What's the real value that you can afford to spend to generate one lead and not lose money? Right? That's the kind of crux of advertising for me, or at least it always has been, in the sense of it's not about getting the cheapest possible leads. It's about getting what's realistically your cost per acquisition, your real cost per acquisition, and making sure that it's a viable number so that you're not spending more than you're actually making.
Right. Exactly. And that's another reason why we focus on B2B companies for the most part, because a lot of B2B companies are typically a higher price point for their offering. They usually have a higher LTV for their customers, so that ROI will then make sense for when you are paying these higher cost per click, higher cost per leads for your leads and for your marketing. We typically see that it is best to have a bit higher price point offer, higher LTV for your customer. So that is also why you don't see a ton of you don't see very many at all consumer products and services advertised on LinkedIn. It's pretty much all business focused stuff.
Yeah, if you've got the budget within the price point to sell, then you can afford to spend the money. And it is something actually that I think a lot of small businesses are scared of because of that. The price difference between running a Facebook ads campaign, especially when you're getting started, limited resources, etc. But it can be a high risk element to doing it on LinkedIn when you're talking about cost per click of being $4.50. It can scare off quite a lot of small companies, but the reality is if you're in a B2B space, you're far more likely to generate valuable leads through LinkedIn than you would be, for example, through Facebook if you're selling a corporate service of some kind.
Exactly. Yeah. For a lot of these companies, it's that their customer, LinkedIn's kind of the only place that they can target them. Not many places are able, like Facebook has very limited job title targeting. And just very limited job title targeting. So if you have that specific person that you want to target at a specific type of company, LinkedIn's kind of the only place to do it. Companies that we see do the best with these type of campaigns, I'll give you kind of a few different things that I usually share with people to see if they're a good fit. Is LinkedIn is a great top of funnel strategy for starting the conversation and getting in front of these people. For the most part, unless you're a major brand, this is probably the first time that this prospect is seeing your company. The first time they're seeing your company name, your logo, and like hearing your message. Most of our campaigns are lead generation on LinkedIn, and we use a lead magnet focused approach where someone's going to be downloading a guide or a PDF or a checklist, something that's going to be interesting to them, giving them a reason to opt in and start the conversation. So this is the kind of first touch point of them learning about your company. You want your lead magnet to be, there's a lot about lead magnet strategy that goes into like the positioning of that. You want to, if you're not a major brand, then you want your topic to be focused on the problem that your prospect has, and then give them a little bit of information, a quick win, share a solution or share an example. Templates are great. Checklists are great, where they can like read that and they'll learn a little bit, and they'll, through that process of reading that guide, they're going to learn a little bit. They're going to gain some trust in you that you know what you're talking about, and it's going to create some familiarity. So that's the first touch point. And then at that point, after somebody has signed up, you have their contact information. You then want to continue the conversation, generally over email with follow-ups, one-on-one outreaches, sales outreach. So as somebody signs up for that lead magnet, call out to them. I'm not sure I recommend like a lot of people say that the best practice is within the first 5 minutes to call your lead. And before our LinkedIn top of funnel strategy here, I actually think that giving them a little bit of time to digest that lead magnet is useful. So while you should contact them fast, I wouldn't say within the first 5 minutes, because they likely haven't even had a chance to really read what that is yet. They still don't know enough to really trust you to have that phone call conversation. So follow up with them shortly afterwards, but approach it as a very introductory, hey, I saw you signed up for this checklist. We're offering free consultations right now. It's a 20-minute phone call to learn more about your business and show you some tips and tricks that we see work for other people in the industry. Are you interested in setting up that quick call? And then getting them on a call, maybe with an expert after that, and then continuing them through your sales process afterwards. So LinkedIn's a great top of funnel strategy, and like the only place where you can target these types of people. That is the first touch point. So then you need to nurture your leads and work your leads after that, and continue the conversation until they get to the point of buying. Most B2B companies typically have a longer buying cycle where it is going to take a few different touch points for someone to make that decision. Maybe they need to get price approval from other people in their company. Maybe they need to share the literature with other people in their company. So, I think they say like the average B2B sales cycle is like 90 days or so. So you want to have a follow-up sequence in place. I don't know if you need to go to the 90-day, go to the extent of 90 days, but you should have a few additional touch points in there. You should follow up with your leads so that you're maximizing the amount of value that you're getting out of them, because you are typically paying more, per lead than other platforms.
So I'm going to get geeky now and start asking you more in-depth questions. And for anyone who doesn't particularly enjoy the geekiness of online ads, I apologize in advance. In terms of the content that you guys are doing, and you've mentioned obviously lead magnet focused, and I think that's a great play for a lot of B2B customers. It gives you a great touch point, education point, all sorts to get that customer journey started. But what sort of content in terms of the ads themselves are you finding work really well on LinkedIn?
So typically short and to the point, short and direct ads work best on LinkedIn. And it's because you're usually paying cost per click on LinkedIn, whereas on like Facebook, you're usually paying CPM. So on Facebook, we see a lot of ads that are kind of attention grabbing, flashy videos where they're curiosity invoking and they're trying to draw the click to get somebody to click through. And then, they'll go retarget them later and stuff like that. But on LinkedIn, because you're usually paying per click, you want to eliminate any untargeted clicks or irrelevant clicks that aren't interested in what you have to offer. So we tend to be very direct in who it is we're talking to, what we're offering, and clear on like what it is they're going to be receiving. So our copy is actually usually on the shorter side of things. First of all, LinkedIn ads have a much shorter body copy length allowable than like Facebook ads. So overall, copy is shorter on LinkedIn, but we tend to make it short and to the point, be very clear on what it is that you're offering, what the lead magnet is, what they're going to be downloading, who you're speaking to. And for the most part, we usually start our campaigns with image ads on LinkedIn. On Facebook, everyone's all about video and how like that's the best performing ad unit. On LinkedIn, we actually find that to start, videos can almost be too appealing at first, where somebody might click before they really know what it is that your video is about or what it is you're offering. And they might just click because it's a flashy video. And then you just paid for that click. And when you're paying, a lot more per click, then that's going to hurt your performance a lot. So we usually start with image ads, being very direct and to the point. And then on Facebook, they have their 20% text rule. LinkedIn does not have that. And in fact, we find more text in the ad image actually does perform better. We usually put a little button graphic in there. Those are some best practices for LinkedIn ads.
Nice. I like it. And in terms of when for your clients, especially, I've had this conversation too many times to care to remember exactly, but I have a real argument sometimes with clients over landing pages. And this is something that I'd like to get your input on. For me, it's a very simple process. The idea is if we're going to spend money on ads, there needs to be a clear objective. So if we're spending money on the ads, that's got a very clear objective, which is take somebody to a landing page, which is focused on one thing, right? We're not sending people to home pages. We're not sending people to generic content. The ad is very specific. It's about the particular offer, whatever it might be. So like you were mentioning, a lead generation or lead magnet, something focused like that, and then taking them through to a landing page. I'd like to get some insight from you as to how you feel companies can best help themselves when it comes to that landing page and that process of building out their advert landing page offer.
Yeah, so landing pages are also very important. So someone's going to sign up for your lead magnet, and they're going to go to a landing page to receive it. You generally want it to be a focused experience so that someone's going to sign up to get the lead magnet, and then you take them. Usually we'll do one of two things. We'll either take them directly to the lead magnet afterwards. Maybe it's embedded on a page, or maybe the download link is there, so they can right away get what they opted in for. I think that provides a good user experience. You know, when you sign up for something, you're like, hey, I want to read it now. So let them consume it, let them learn something and get a quick win out of it. And then we offer them a follow-up call to action, usually lower on the page, or making it clear that, hey, you got this guide. Now that you've learned some stuff, the next step is to book a call with our sales team. We usually position it as, now that you've learned something about this topic, if you're interested in how we can help you with this, or if you're interested in a free consultation to learn more, maybe to learn more best practices or get specific tips or a free strategy guide for your company specifically, then book a call here. And then we'll take them on to offer them to book a call or to get in touch with the team in some way.
So I remember talking with Travis. I can't remember what episode it was. Travis runs Campaign Refinery, an email marketing automation business, and also a contest platform. And he's been doing this for years, ever since before I met him, actually, sort of nearly a decade ago. But when we were talking together and I asked him about this, because I know how particular he can be, how many landing pages would you say you have written over the course of your career whilst trying to get ads to work properly?
Hundreds, maybe thousands of landing pages.
So the reason I ask this is because it happens to me time and time again, especially recently over the time during the whole COVID-19 crisis, world panic, let's call it at the stage. I've spoken to probably about 40, 45 businesses, and the amount of companies that have tried, as they call it, I made a landing page. And you're like, that, talk me through this. You made a landing page. And they're like that. Yeah, it didn't work. It didn't convert. No one signed up. No one did anything. I was like that. Right. And that's it. That's everything that you did about that. That you'd never tried something different. You didn't try and create a different version or a new version or make it simpler or make it more. And they're like that. No, it didn't work. We stopped trying. And I think it's so important. And I think, again, for landing pages, for the offer, for ads, the copy, the creative, the text, the imagery or the video, everything is about testing, right? Like from my side of things, even when I'm coaching people through different things, all I keep saying is I can't give you the answer, right? The marketplace will tell us what works and what doesn't. We need to try, we need to test. So let's try this versus this, then let's try that versus that. And we're constantly trying to iterate on ideas to figure out exactly what works really well. And I was just wondering what sort of advice you have for people that, if they've tried once and they failed and it didn't work, they need to get back out there. But if they've tried a couple of times even, how do you help people to really understand and grasp how important that is?
It's critical. I can even give some examples that there's lots of layers of testing that you can do in a campaign, and it is important to do them all. I think just throughout my career, any times that maybe the client seemed very sure that this was the best audience. There have been times when maybe if we did not do a split test and we just launched one, first of all, it doesn't give you anything to kind of compare against. So you're like, okay, I'm kind of in average benchmark range. I think I'm doing okay. But once you have a split test, you can really clearly see, okay, this one's doing better than the other one. Let's focus on this one. And it gives you options. Because if you launch just one test and it flops or doesn't do as great as you'd like it to, you don't really have anywhere to go except for back to the drawing board. So we always split test a few different levels, and most companies have more than one customer segment. So we will split test customer segments, and then on LinkedIn, we will split test types of targeting. What that most commonly looks like is split testing, say, job function and seniority versus specific job titles. That can also be split testing different skills that somebody might have in their profile, or even split testing company sizes, seniority, like I said, seniority levels and stuff like that to go after different decision makers in those segments. So first of all, split testing the customer segments, and then split testing the targeting to those customer segments. And then inside your campaigns, split testing the lead magnets that you do use, which is essentially split testing your offer. So having more than one lead magnet, more than one offer that you're offering to people, because sometimes a checklist does better than an ebook, or other times one that focuses on their pain point does better than one that focuses on a product announcement. So just kind of having those split tests there, and I'm giving two pretty different examples there, but maybe a specific topic, maybe split testing two different pain points in your lead magnet topic would be useful. And then inside those campaigns, of course, split testing all your different ads underneath there to see which different copy, which different images perform as best. So it's a lot of testing in the beginning, but really that's what's going to let you see these differences in performance and then give you those knobs to turn as you go forward. So a lot of times when we launch, we need to have a certain amount of budget available to do those split tests. And companies, I'll talk to people and say, hey, for the first month, you typically want to set aside enough budget to be able to do these split tests. And then the second month, if we find a clear winner, then we can just focus on that one. And we can, sometimes people will launch with that testing budget, get through with testing and say, okay, let's drop it down a little bit. Now that we know which one wins, let's just focus on that campaign and let's run it for a little while and see how our leads do, and then see what those conversion rates look like. Most of the time, people just continue with the same budget, and then we will introduce a new split test every month to continue iterating on those targeting, on those lead magnets, and on those ads. So often every month we're introducing these new split tests, identifying the winner, and then continuing that from there. And then the nice thing about digital advertising and LinkedIn ads is once you find something that works, you can increase the budget and scale up your campaigns from there.
It's always, from my side anyway, I've always kind of looked at it as front loading the work effort with the testing, with the ideas, with just, try everything. And I have to explain this to clients and say, I've been wrong in the past, right? I've thought, this is what's going to work well. And that is just an outlier, crazy idea, but we're going to throw it out there to see what the test says. And I've been proven wrong, right? And it's ended up being the outlier that ends up just completely outperforming, and vice versa, right? When sometimes you think something is going to just absolutely go nowhere, or it's going to fly, or it doesn't really matter which way you look at it. The testing is the only thing that really evaluates the effectiveness of the adverts. And again, I think that's really important for people to understand, not to get scared or put off by the idea of, yeah, but I don't have time or the resources to split test and have multiple ads and multiple landing pages or multiple offers. The reality is, if you don't, then don't spend the money in the first place, because spending a ton of money on one ad, just pushing something out and hoping for the best, the chances are your budget's going to disappear. And at the end of it, you'll have absolutely nothing to show for it. Or you might get lucky. But again, it's really kind of playing the odds game as opposed to putting all your eggs into one basket and almost going out there blind.
Exactly. So we always set up these different layers of split testing, and where we see most commonly is, as we create our campaigns, different people on our team will get involved, maybe suggest angles or suggest stuff like that. And even us internally on the team, like we know what works pretty well on LinkedIn, but the different split tests that we'll set up just internally, as far as like ad angles, copy, maybe even targeting options, where different people might be sure of different things, and then it's like, okay, launch it and then see which ones do well. I always love being surprised on times when other people have when you see an ad that performs really well, that you're like, oh, I didn't expect that angle to do well, and then you kind of look back and maybe analyze it, and then maybe something in that makes sense and you learn something from it. So really the only way to improve your campaigns is through that additional testing.
Couldn't agree more. And I say it again and again and again, and I'll repeat it one more time. Test, 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 man. Everything is a test. Just keep trying things and you'll be amazed what you'll learn. And again, the beauty of online, all the data and information is there for you. So whether it be LinkedIn ads, whether it be Facebook ads, Twitter ads, it doesn't matter. Whether it's just your own website, Google Analytics, even at a very basic level, will give you all the data and information you need to get started to figure out what's working, what people like, what people don't, what people click on, what people don't. And again, you can start to test things to try and figure out how you can improve and make changes. But again, don't be scared of the data. Look at it and figure out what's actually working and what's not. Otherwise, missed opportunities are everywhere, and people don't realize how quickly these little things, little changes, can make such a huge difference for people.
Yep.
Anthony, I'm going to ask you a little bit about organic. Ooh, scary word for anyone who's in paid media, but organic content on LinkedIn. And I quite enjoy LinkedIn. I follow a few people very, very closely. I'm connected with a wide range of people from many years. I've been doing this as an agency for nearly 12 years. What's your take on organic in terms of people, companies really kind of using that system and using LinkedIn to push out their ideas, who they are, what their company does, things like that, as well as helping them with the advertising?
So if you're new to LinkedIn or you haven't really used it heavily, then you probably should start on the organic side of things. The nice thing about advertising is it's like throwing fuel on the fire. So you have to have something to throw that fuel on. Some fire needs to be started. So I do usually recommend people start with organic and get a feel for LinkedIn and how the platform works, and the type of people who are on it, the conversations that are happening there. That'll give you a good feel for them when you get into advertising, what you can expect on the ad side of things. So a lot of times people will start maybe just posting organically to their page or their company profile, connecting with people on LinkedIn, maybe using Sales Navigator to get a feel for the search criteria there. The ads targeting criteria is very similar to the Sales Navigator criteria. We have some additional options in the ad side of things that Sales Navigator doesn't have. But Sales Navigator is a good place to go look up your audience and get a feel for who's going to be in it. It'll show you the actual people that you're going to be targeting. So a lot of times with clients, what we'll do is we'll sit down and look at Sales Navigator, and we're going to select our targeting criteria, and then we're going to pull it up in Sales Navigator to say, hey, these are about the people that are going to be included in your ad campaign. Are these all relevant for your business? So starting on the organic side does have a lot of value. Starting with just posting to your page, LinkedIn can go viral just like Facebook can. And, maybe it's even more valuable because you're going to be going viral to a business audience. So on LinkedIn, some good tips for that is being more active will get you more organic impressions. Using hashtags, the right hashtags will get you more organic impressions because people can follow specific hashtags. So I've seen a lot of times, like even just my newsfeed, say I follow the B2B hashtag, I will see posts from other people using that hashtag, even though I'm not connected with them. So it's a way to get your posts into other feeds. You can tag people and companies on LinkedIn, just like you can on Facebook. That will get your post in front of their audience, and they will get a notification when you do that. So it's a good way to get some more reach and more eyeballs on your posts. Do it tastefully. Don't over tag people. And on hashtags, we do recommend about anywhere from like 2 to 5 hashtags is kind of the range. More than that gets a little spammy, and we find LinkedIn does throttle you. So when you're running ads for your company page, so ads must come from a company page on LinkedIn. You want to have your company page fully fleshed out, all the information input there, have nice imagery, and then have some activity on your page, because there will be some percentage of people that click through to your company page to learn more and do some research. So you want to have some information there for them to consume there. So yeah, to start, LinkedIn organic is a great place to start. If it's your first time kind of getting into LinkedIn, or if you haven't used it much, start on organic. And then as you get a feel for it, as you get comfortable with it, then ads are like throwing fuel on the fire after that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn for the potential to have conversations as well. And this is something that for us as a social media agency, we feel that a lot of brands have